All right, it's 7. We're going to get rolling right away. Thank you for those of you that took time to join us tonight. And if you're watching this on the video replay after the fact, thanks for taking the time to watch as well. I'm going to apologize right away tonight. This is a bit of an experiment, and there might be some technical challenges along the way. I am screencasting my iPad to my computer and then screen sharing my computer to you. So if the connections get lost along the way, I might have to take a moment to reconnect it all. But my name is Erica Armstrong if you've never met me. I'm Assistive Technology Resource Teacher with Peel. And joining us tonight is Lorraine Holt. She's also an Assistive Technology Resource Teacher, and she's hanging out with you guys in the chat so that I don't have to type and talk at the same time. So thanks, Lorraine, for helping me out. And I'm going to try to pay attention to the chat as well, but if it gets going too fast or if I can't catch something, then Lorraine's there to help as well. So feel free to keep asking questions. And if it's not something I have a chance to get around to tonight, then I'll definitely follow up with you after the fact. But hopefully we can answer as many questions as we can. I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. And that's definitely important to remember each and every day and to make sure our students understand the significance of that acknowledgement, and it's not just something we say. And tonight's presentation is also a part of the board's goals for equity and inclusion. We want to make sure that all students are equipped to learn. And for some students, that means they need some extra supports. So I'm glad you're taking the time to learn a bit more about how we can really leverage the power of iPads. Because we know through the EML vision that when we equip students with the right technology and we empower them in the right way and we're flexible in how we expect them to share their learning, that they can really do some great things. So our big why tonight is exactly that. We want to empower them. We want to use their strengths to maybe help overcome some of those weaknesses or weaker areas. And that's more than okay, right? We all play to our own strengths. So we want students to be able to do that as well. Normally at this point in the presentation, I play a video over this live stream. It doesn't really do it justice. So I will mention that right under the video in the video description, if you click on show more, there is a link to this slide deck. And so I will encourage you at some point to play this video and maybe even watch it with your students because it's quite powerful. A lot of what we're talking tonight falls under what we call UDL, Universal Design for Learning. So a lot of these things will be necessary for some students, but often they're good for all. And some of these things are things I use each and every day. And we might not even recognize them as, assistive technology. It's just great technology. All right, so enough chit chat. I think you get the picture. It's all important stuff, and I could talk about that all forever, but we are really here to learn how. So I'm going to dive into a few things. I'm going to demonstrate usually 2 features at a time, and then I'm going to pause for a moment and give you a chance to try it. So I would encourage you to watch first, and then if you happen to have an iPhone or iPad with you, I will stop talking for a minute or so and give you a chance to try in this kind of a format that's kind of awkward because I can't see you, so I don't know when you're done. So I will say this, if you're getting overwhelmed or you're feeling like you can't keep up, don't worry, this is all recorded. You can all come back to it later and watch it again and watch it with a pause button there to kind of stop it. So I'll do my best, but just the limitations of this kind of a format. So first things first is finding the settings. Most of the accessibility settings we're talking about tonight are in the same general area. They're in your settings app and then in general, and then in accessibility. And there are tons and tons and tons of things in this area. And I'm going to go over quite a few of them tonight, but by all means, I'm not going to cover everything that's possible. So do know that if you have a unique situation with a student that has a particular situation that you'd like some more support with, we as ATRTs love that kind of troubleshooting and co-planning, and brainstorming with you to figure out, what's the best solution for this particular circumstance. So I'm going to focus tonight on the things that are, more common, more often used, but by all means, we can get really specialized. So don't hesitate to reach out and we can give you like more personalized and directed help. Okay. I'm going to start out with some writing support. So I'm going to go away from the slide deck and actually show you on my iPad. So like I said, the slide deck is linked. You can refer to it later, but I'm just going to get rid of it for now. And the first thing I want to show you, I'm just going to open up notes so I have somewhere to write. And I'm just going to click to start writing. And I have two different ways that I can support myself with writing. The first one we're all pretty familiar with because I'm sure we've all written a text message this way. It's the little microphone that's right next to the space bar. So when I touch that microphone, I'm getting this message. Do I want to enable dictation? And yes, I do. So I'm going to tap on it. And now it's listening to me and I can talk, period, new paragraph. How do you like this tool? ? So I know it's very small text, so you might not be able to see, but it did write exactly what I said. And you can see, just like if you're familiar with read and write and talk and type, exactly the same. You have to say your punctuation at the end of your sentences. And there are some voice commands you can learn to make it go more smoothly, like saying a new paragraph, for example. Now, let's say you're in a really noisy environment, or maybe it's a time where it's not best to be speaking out loud. The other option is word prediction. And again, we're familiar with this when we're texting away. It's those words that are appearing right at the top of the keyboard. And we can just select what we want. And that's a great support for a lot of students who struggle with spelling or, just want a little bit of extra support. Tammy is asking, can a language be switched for French? Absolutely. I'm noticing my screen is a little bit cut off, but on the very bottom row of keys on the very far left, there's a button that has a globe on it. And if I touch and hold that, the keyboard settings pop out. And so I'm going to go up to keyboard settings and I'm going to go to keyboards and I'm going to add a new keyboard. And in this case, I'm going to find French Canada. Yeah, there it goes. And so now I've added that. I'm going to go back to my note, back to my globe, and now I have the option for Français. And you can see now it's suggesting, everything in French. Same with typing accents in French. If you touch and hold the letter key, then you can slide your finger up and choose one of the characters that has an accent on it. So there we go. So that's two ways to help with writing. I'm going to give you a minute to try it yourself. And in the meantime, if you have any other questions, you can ask, but I'm just going to pause there for a moment to give you a chance to try. Melissa says, if she doesn't have a globe on your iPad, where do you find it? Melissa, if you only have one keyboard installed, you might not see the globe yet. So in your case, if you just go to Settings, General, and then Keyboard, and then at the top where it says Keyboards, you probably only have one, so you'll just click on Keyboards, add a new keyboard, and then after you add at least a second keyboard, then the globe should start appearing for you. Melanie is asking, if the microphone is gray and I can't click on it, how do I enable it? Melanie, I'm not 100% sure. Usually if you do tap on it, it might pop up asking you if you can enable it. And if it's completely grayed out, I might have to look into that for you and see if we can troubleshoot that together. I'd be glad to do that. If you send me an email, that will remind me. There might be a setting somewhere you have to. Yeah, it's under keyboards as well. So yeah, in the keyboard settings, right here you have the option to enable dictation. So toggling on that switch might do the trick. If not, just let me know, send me an email, we can troubleshoot that. Oh, good point, Gregory. There might be a privacy setting that's preventing that microphone from being active. So yeah, under settings and privacy, and then microphone, you may have to enable it there, although just for dictation, usually don't have to. But again, we can troubleshoot that together. Nancy as well saying that she can't find the globe. Yeah, the globe won't appear until you have 2 keyboards. So you'll have to go in and add French as a language through settings first. And then once you have English and French in there, then the globe should appear. And depending too on the orientation you're holding your iPad or iPhone, I find holding it, widthwise gives you more options on the keyboard. That might help as well. Okay, moving on now. I want to show you some options for the opposite. So we've just done speech to text, where you talk and it writes it down for you. But many students need help the other way around with reading. They need the text read aloud to them, so that's called text-to-speech. And to do that, I'm going to go back into settings, and I'm going to go to general. And then under general, we have the accessibility section. And in here, like I mentioned, there's tons and tons and tons. For this particular thing, I'm going to click on speech. And then under speech, I'm going to toggle on speak selection. And I'm also going to toggle on speak screen. I'm also going to turn on highlighting content. And I'm going to change it to words. You can play with the colors and stuff to get it exactly how you like it. You can turn on typing feedback if you like. Typing feedback would make it so that every time you finish off a sentence with a piece of punctuation, it's going to read that whole sentence back aloud to you, which is great for those students who write and they think they're writing what they mean, but until they hear it back, sometimes they've missed a word or it's not quite what they meant. So that's a good one to add on if you like. You can also go into voices and you can customize the different voices to pick one you like. I'm using the Siri voice, but you can, find your favorite accent. And then right here you can change the speaking rate. So mine's right in the middle between fast and slow, but if you want it to read slower, you can slow it down.
Speak selection reads selected content.
Or speed it up.
Speak selection reads selected content. Speak selection reads selected content.
So I don't know how well you're going to be able to hear my iPad tonight. You might not hear it very well, but at least you'll get the idea. Under pronunciations, you can actually get really fancy and you can teach it how to pronounce certain words if it's saying things wrong. That's really great for students' names, for example. It could really be bothersome for a child if the iPad is constantly saying their name wrong. All right, so now that I've set that up, it's a one-time thing. So if I come back to this iPad tomorrow, I don't have to reset it up every time. But now that it's there, I'm going to go to the internet, and I'm just on the Canadian Encyclopedia website. And I'd like to read this article, but I need a little support. So I have 2 options, because we toggled on both speak screen and speak selection. I'm going to show you speak selection first. So the way that works is you select some text. And on an iPad, that skill is a bit tricky. So you just kind of touch and hold on the word until that little highlight thing comes up. And then you see there's two blue dots, one before and one after. And if you drag the blue dot, you can drag out the whole selection you'd like. And now you see above the selection, you have some options, and one of them is speak.
Mabel Adeline, Addie, A. Lestock, minister of the British Methodist Episcopal Church, born September 8, 1909 in Glen Ellyn.
Okay, I'm not going to let it read the whole thing, but you get the idea. It reads exactly what you've selected. And because I turned on that highlight feature, as it's reading, it's trying its best to highlight each word as it goes along. So that can help students, visually track, so they're reading while they're hearing it. And that can really help build their confidence with reading. Now, my second option is speak screen. Now, speak screen is a bit trickier to get used to. It involves using two fingers, and you have to swipe down with two fingers from the top of your screen. And it might take a few tries to get used to, because sometimes you accidentally end up pulling down your notifications bar or other things as you're trying to do it. But I'm going to do my best to give it a go here.
The Canadian Encyclopedia, Educators, Timelines.
Collection.
Browse.
Content.
So you can see, oh, there goes my connection. I'll reconnect here in a second. All right, I knew that would happen at least once. All right, we're back. So as you can see, it's reading everything. And on an internet website, that's a bit annoying. You don't need it to read all the menus. You want it to read the text. So I often prefer on a website that speak selection option. But one thing that's great about Speak Screen is it does bring up that menu bar that lets you make it faster or slower right from there, which is helpful. So it's just two different ways to do the exact same thing. While we're on this website, I wanted to point out something called Safari Reader View. So this works when you're on a website in the Safari browser on your iPad. And if you look at the address bar at the top, on the very left next to the address, you're going to see a bunch of lines. And I'm trying to circle them with my computer mouse here so you can kind of see where it is. But if I tap on that, it's going to reload the page and just focus on the actual article, the actual text. It's going to get rid of the menus and all the distractions. And I really like this. It's very similar to the Simplify Page feature with Read and Write, except this one keeps the visuals that are relevant to the story. And then if I wanted to use Speak Screen with this, it would work a lot better because all those menus are gone. Now, one additional kind of helpful thing that you can do is you can look up words. So if I don't know a word, I can highlight it just by touching it and waiting for it to select. And then this time, instead of hitting on speak, I'm going to hit look up. And it looks up the definition, and then it does kind of a Google search, and it's going to show related TV shows and videos and things, probably not super relevant, but at least it gives us some definitions. And they may or may not be helpful depending on the word, but it's an option. Okay, so that was quite a bit. I'm going to pause right there again and give you a chance to try. And if you have questions, I will answer a few as well. Allison's asking if we could then take this view and save it as a PDF. That's a great question. I've never tried this before, Allison, but I'm going to give something a try. I'm going to click on this square with the arrow pointing up over it. That's the share button. And there's sometimes a lot of options in here. Oh, wonderful. Yeah, we do have that option. Right here where it says save PDF to books, that would do it. I'm going to try. Yeah, there we go. That was easy. And then Melissa's asking if I can show speak screen again. So I'm going to try it right here with this PDF. I actually still have it open. It was just over to the side, so I'm going to close it. I'm taking 2 fingers. Sorry, I hit the microphone. That was probably loud. I'm taking 2 fingers and I'm pulling down from the top of the screen for that toolbar to pop up. And so if you don't see that toolbar pop up, you might have to just keep trying and going like this until you make it work. You have to start kind of up past the top of the screen and pull down kind of towards the middle of the screen. There it
Add
goes.
the ALS doc. Mabel Adeline. Addie. ALS.
And then I can pause. I can skip ahead. I can make it go slower or faster right from there. And that triggered my screen to disappear. I will reconnect again. Just a moment. Apparently it doesn't like speak screen. Now I know. Tammy is saying that Safari Reader View isn't an option for her. Tammy, it's something that not every website is compatible with. It depends on the creators of the website and how they've set it up behind the scenes. And unfortunately, it's completely outside of our control. So I do find about 75% to 80% of websites, it's there. It's more likely to be there on a page with lots of text. So if you're on a kind of a page where you're just browsing for articles and it's a page just with lots of links everywhere, actually get into an article and then see if it's there. So you're saying you tried it on the star. Let's give that a go. So I'm just picking the first article that comes up. And there we go. So now that I'm in the actual article, yeah, now it's showing up. And I have that reader view. So, but yeah, that's a good point. It's not going to be there all the time. Oh, and one more thing about reader view that I neglected to show you earlier is now that you're in reader view, if you look over the opposite side of the address bar, you see this little small a and this huge A. If I tap on that, it's going to pop up some additional options for reader view. So depending on your eye fatigue, you might prefer to actually read with a dark background or gray or cream. You can also change the font to something different. If you've been reading in the same font for a while, that can be fatiguing, so sometimes it's good to switch over. And if I hit the little a or big A at the top of the screen, I can also increase the size. So that can be great if you have any blind or low vision students in your class. It can make it more accessible for them. Or even just easier on your eyes if something's tiny. All right. So I hope everyone was able to give some of the reading features a try. Let me know if there are any further questions about that, and then we'll move on. Okay, I'm not seeing any further questions, but feel free to leave them there later if you didn't have time to do it now. Now I want to show you a trick. It's not necessarily an accessibility trick, but it makes iPads more user-friendly for getting some work done. Let's say you wanted students to read this here article, but also take notes on it at the same time. Instead of having to flip back and forth between the different apps, you can actually do a split screen view. Now, I'm not 100% sure that this is going to work on every iPad if you have really much older iPads, this feature wouldn't be there. But if you have up-to-date iPads with the latest iOS, it should be there. I can't remember exactly which iOS it was introduced in. I believe it was 10 or 11. So even if it's not the latest and greatest, it should be fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open Notes again, getting ready to take my note on the article. And then at the very bottom of my iPad screen, I'm going to gently and slowly pull up. Not a really fast gesture, just a gentle pull up. And if I do that nice and slow, nice and gently, you're going to see the dock appear with all these other recently looked at apps. I'm going to touch and hold on my Safari app and drag it up. And then it turns like this. So I can put it on the right or the left, but I'm just going to put it near the edge of my screen and drop it. And now I have the article and my notes side by side. Right in the middle, there's this little gray line, and I can actually drag that to kind of resize so it's more half and half. And now I can independently, browse through this article and read it, but also be over here taking my note, which is great. And I can use all the same features, word prediction, dictation, all of that should work as well, side by side. So that's super handy and not something a lot of students are familiar with. So it's a good thing to demonstrate to them and show them. Any questions about that one before I move on to something kind of completely different from reading and writing? Melissa's saying when you pull up from the bottom, your AirPlay and AirDrop keeps coming up. Yeah, it's kind of tricky, Melissa. It's a fine touch kind of thing. You kind of have to just gently pull up only a little bit and it should come up. I know it's tricky because, yeah, you're right. If you do, gesture up too far or too quickly, you do get something else happening. So just very, touching from the very, very bottom, just pulling up a teeny tiny bit and it should come up. Can you use the split screen view with a Google app? Absolutely, Manpreet. You can use it with any apps. So just, open the first app, go out of it, open the second app, and then do that little pull up thing, and they should show up there. Not all of your apps show up in your dock. Only your most recently opened apps show up in your dock. But just by opening them, you can change that. Or if there are apps you use quite frequently, you can actually, customize what shows up on your dock. I will show you that quickly. So for myself, I have the Safari, the files, and the settings on my dock all the time. If I touch and hold any app, they all start wiggling. And now I can drag them around. So if I don't need files all the time, I can drag that off my dock. It's not something I need constantly. But maybe I am using reminders a lot, so I can pull reminders down and put it on my dock. So you can completely customize that, and that will make it a little bit easier to manage your split screen views. And while I'm kind of showing you how to arrange things, you can see that I like using folders on my iPad. I find it keeps me organized. I know where my apps are, and then I'm not, flipping around in pages and pages of apps. So while you're in this mode where your apps are wiggling, and again, you just touch and hold one, and then they start wiggling, you then tap it again and hold it, and then drag it, and you can rearrange them in any order you want. So this Geoboard one, I'm going to plop in my math folder. Prodigy, I can move to my math folder. Now, if I want to make a new folder that I don't have yet, I just place one app on top of another app, and then it generates a folder for me. And by default, it gives it a random name, but you can change it to whatever name you like. So it's a little finicky, and you can take some time to manage things and move them around. But once you've done that, you have it really nicely organized. iPad, I don't know about you, I'm very type A. I like things organized. And I often took the iPads in my school and organized them all the same way. And that can take a lot of time, but if you get the students to help you, it's not too bad. Okay, I don't see any other questions I haven't gotten to yet, so I'm going to keep going. Navjot, don't worry about joining late. That's more than fine. So the next thing I want to show you is guided access. Guided access is a way to lock an iPad into a certain app. Now, this might be useful if you're doing a center and a rotation, and you want to make sure the students are only using that one particular thing. Or maybe you work in a contained special education classroom and you have a student who needs to use a certain app, but they're prone to close it and go to something else. Well, you can fix that. So if you go to Settings, General, Accessibility, same place we were before, you're going to scroll all the way down, and it's the second last option from the bottom, Guided Access. From here, you're going to toggle it on. Mine is already on, but you probably have to flick it on if it's never been used before. And then right underneath, there are passcode settings. So you'll want to set a passcode. This is how the student won't be able to get out, because you will not tell them this passcode. So I'm going to set my passcode. If you're trying this right now, it's super important you don't pick something complicated you will forget, because you can lock yourself out of your own iPad. And then there's literally nothing you can do about it besides really wiping out your whole iPad and resetting to factory settings. So don't forget this. Don't pick something you won't remember tomorrow. So I'm just going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, super secure password. But I know I won't forget. In my case, my iPad supports Face ID, so I can also use that. If you have ones that support Touch ID, I would not suggest doing that on a school iPad. But a passcode was fine. And if you know in a school you're going to use something consistent, then you might all know it. All right, so now that it's set up, I'm going to leave Settings, and I'm going to open up the app I'd like the students to be in. In this case, let's try Pattern Shapes. And then now that I'm in here, depending on the model of the device you have, you're either going to triple click your home button if you have a home button. I'm on an iPad that doesn't have a home button. Some iPhones don't have home buttons anymore. And in our case, we triple click the power button. So this is going to be tricky. If I don't do it fast enough, it might actually turn off the power. There I go. So I pressed it 3 times quickly, and now I have these guided access settings that come up. I have some options, and yours might look a little bit different than mine. It's all the same, but your options might show up on the right-hand side instead of the left. I can put on a time limit if I like. This is a great feature if you're letting students try something for 5 or 10 minutes, and then you don't want to have to be the bad guy at the end. You can set it for however long, and then once the time is up, it's just over. They won't be able to do anything else. And then the other thing you can do, this app is not bad. There's no area in this app that I don't want students to get in. But in certain apps, they have like a settings area or an area for parents. that you just don't want the kids messing with, you can actually take your finger and circle any area you don't want the kids to be able to use. So I'm going to pretend, for example, I don't want the kids to be able to get into this info button in the bottom corner. I'm just tapping on my iPad and drawing a circle around that area. And it's very subtle, but you can probably see there's now a gray circle covering that little info button. And that means nobody's going to be able to touch that info button anymore. So now that it's set up and ready, I'm going to hit start. Guided access has begun with a 5-minute time limit. If I try to hit that info button, nothing happens, but I can still use the rest of the app like normal and do my thing. If I try to leave the app, nothing happens. The home button won't work. So as the teacher, when you're ready to stop guided access because you're ready for to move on to something else, you get out the same way you got in. So you're going to triple click your home button or your power button, depending. It's going to prompt you to put in your passcode. And then I can end it. Once it's ended, then I can leave the app like normal. So there we go. Karen, yeah, to answer your question, unfortunately, that you just have to do it one by one. There's no setting that can prevent that. Now, guided access is lovely and great. One downside of it is that sometimes you want to give students an iPad with a time limit, but you want them to be able to browse between different apps. You don't want them stuck on just one. So for that, you do have a second option. If I have a passcode on this iPad, it works even better, but you don't necessarily have to have a passcode. So for this one, I'm going to open Clock, and it's just the built-in Clock app on the iPad, nothing special. And then along the bottom, I have the different options, and I'm going to head over to Timer. And this is a basic timer that we all know and love, but the trick to it is changing right here where it says radar. So radar is just the default alarm sound, but I'm going to tap on it, and I'm going to go all the way to the bottom where it says stop playing. I'm going to choose that. So now instead of ringing out loud when my time is up, it's actually just going to lock my iPad to the lock screen. So to show you, I'm going to set myself to a 5-second timer. And you know what? When it locks, it's probably going to disconnect from my screen, but I will try anyways. So now I can leave this and I can open different apps and to my heart's content. And then my 5 seconds was up. So there it goes. It's back to the lock screen. Now, if the student doesn't know the passcode to get back into the iPad, they're then stuck out of it. If they do know the code or there's no passcode, obviously they can get right back in. There we go. Okay, so that's 2 options for controlling access. So I'm going to stop for a moment to give you a chance to try and to give a chance for some questions to come in if there are any, before I move on to the next thing. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, so I'm going to keep going. Like I said, if I'm going too fast, don't worry, you can always come back later. But without a way to judge, it's hard to know when to move on. I just have 2 little tricks left to show you. And then if there are any final questions, I'll have a chance for those as well. So this trick is another way to help students keep organized. It's a great one if you have websites you're using frequently, but maybe they have long addresses and they're hard to type in. So you can actually turn any website into an app. It doesn't actually make it a real app, it just makes a shortcut to the app. So I'm going to go back to Safari. I'm going to get rid of my notes. And I'm going to head to code.org because that's something I often had my students do. But the main page is very busy and very confusing. And what I really wanted them to get to quickly was the sign in page. So I'm just going to go to the sign in page. And here it is. That's the one I really wanted them to get to quickly. But navigating there was tricky, or it took a lot of time. So if I come up to the top of the screen to the share button, it's the square with the arrow pointing up out of it. I'm going to tap on that and a bunch of options come up. The one I'm going to choose doesn't actually show up right here. I actually have to slide this over. And then the option to add to home screen appears. So I'm going to click on add to home screen. And then I can change the text if I like. If I don't change this now, I can't edit it later. So do take the time to do it right away. And then I'm going to click the button add. And then it appeared here on my second page. If I don't want it on my second page, click until it wiggles, move it over, drop it where you want it. But now I have this code sign in. It looks just like an app, but anytime a student taps on it, it just loads up that website. Manpreet is asking, can you block or restrict access to apps also? Yes, you can. It's tricky on a school shared device for this to work, but let's say for your own personal device or your device for your own personal children, if you go into settings and you're updated to the latest iOS, there is now this section called screen time. And in here you can set app limits. So you can set time limits for certain apps, like they can only use games for 20 minutes a day or whatnot. I can also click on my report and it will show me exactly what apps I've been using. And let's say pattern shapes, that's a terrible app. I don't want my kid using this. I'm joking, obviously, but just as an example, I can click add limit and I can say, oh, Erica, you can only use pattern shapes for 5 minutes a day. And you add it, and that limits you. So I'm getting my warning that I can only use it for 5 more minutes a day. So that's one option for restricting and blocking certain apps. Other than that, if there are apps on your school iPad that you really don't want your students to use, just get rid of them completely is one option from that certain iPad, or lock your student in with guided access to the app that they should be using. And that way they can't get out of it and they can't go to other things they shouldn't be on. So that's kind of your options. The other thing you can do is you can manage the iPads in your classroom with an app called Apple Classroom. This is not to be confused with Google Classroom. And the way this works is the teacher has to have the app downloaded on their iPad. The student iPads don't necessarily have to have it. And it looks just like this. It is a free app, so you can go to the App Store and get it. Or on your school iPads, you might have to put in a HeWeb to request it. So I'm going to be able to demonstrate for you the teacher side of things on this. Unfortunately, I can't show you the complete side of this because you need the student iPads to see that, but I'll show you what you would do as the teacher. So I've just given my name. I'm going to create a class. So you can have as many classes as you need. And then I can go into my French class. And then I would click on Add Students. And at this point, the students would have to open their iPads. They would go into this Settings app. And then in Settings, right here underneath of Bluetooth, after they wait for a few seconds, the word Classroom will appear. And they will click on that and put in the class code. So if this is something you're interested in learning more about, unfortunately I can't demonstrate the whole thing now, but it's something I could help you with later, and your ATRTs can help you with, as far as coming and helping you set it up for the first time and showing it to your whole class. But essentially, the class code is right here on the bottom. The students would input those 4 digits, or you could set it up in advance, just sit at a table with all the iPads and go along and do it to each one. Once you had students in the class, though, you'll see up here you have a lot of options. You can actually see visually what each student is doing on all of their iPads at a glance from your iPad, which is magical. And if a student is off doing something they shouldn't, you can tap on them and lock their iPad. And then, call them over and say, hey, I noticed you were doing this, you're off topic, do you need some extra support? How can I support you? You can also share out things to all the iPads in your class. So if you're reading that article and you want to kind of beam it to all of your students, you can do that. You can lock them into a particular app from your teacher control panel here. So you have a lot of ability to kind of monitor and control what's going on in your classroom right from here. Takes a bit of that upfront work to set it all up, but once it's set up once, when you come back tomorrow, it'll still be set up and you can still do it. So Cyril asks if student iPads don't need the app. That's correct, Cyril. Only the teacher iPad needs the app. The students just need to go in their settings, and if you're on this screen as the teacher that's saying waiting for students, it's kind of broadcasting out a signal to all the other iPads nearby. And so then when they open up settings, right underneath Bluetooth, it shows up as Classroom. You'll just tap there and put in that code. Allison asks, will those new apps, the pages saved as an app, stay on the home page, or will they be deleted if it's a school shared staff iPad? No, it'll stay there, Allison, until somebody deletes it. It shouldn't disappear on you, though. So I know I really just scratched the surface on Apple Classroom and what it can do. By all means, this is something ATRTs would be glad to give you more support with, because there's really a lot of potential there. And the very last little tip and trick I wanted to share with you tonight, before we sign off for the evening, is I don't know how many of you have Apple TVs in your classroom, but I know it's quite common these days. And they come with this teeny tiny little remote that tends to grow legs and wander away. So one thing I suggest you all do, either on your personal iPhones or on some classroom iPads, is you can actually install the Apple TV remote app, and it will work the same as the actual physical remote. So you just go to the App Store, search for Apple TV remote, and there it is. And you just open it up, and it's going to search for Apple TVs that are nearby. In my case right now, it's not picking up anything, but it should pick up, and it'll see the whole list of Apple TVs in your building, and you would pick yours. I think you do have to have the physical remote present for the first time that you just kind of sync it. But then afterwards. There's no, where's my remote? I never lost mine, but it was always somewhere in my room. I could just never quite find it. So by putting that on my phone, it kind of saved my life. So it's a good one to know about. And not to mention, I found it actually easier to use the app than the actual physical remote. So just going to go back to my slide deck to mention there are some links in there to learn more. There's the Apple Accessibility website, which has tons of information. Our ATRT YouTube channel, which you're all on right now, will have the recording of this. And we also have other playlists of things where you can get instructions just in a quick snippet to learn more. And just searching YouTube in general, there are tons of little tutorials out there people have put out. But by all means, I want to emphasize that last part. Please reach out to your assistive technology resource teacher. Every school has one assigned to them. If you don't know who yours is, feel free to send me an email and I can connect you with the person that is assigned to your school. But we love coming in and working with teachers. Our job is to help you. And anything to do with universal design or learning about accessibility, anything to help with special education and technology mixed together, we are glad to do it. So with that, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. I'm going to stick around for as long as there are more questions pouring in, so no rush. If you have other things you'd like answered, I'll stick around for a little while. But otherwise, that's it for tonight. You are welcome, everyone. Please do send me some feedback as well about the format of webinars. It's kind of a bit of an experiment. We'd love to know if this is a format that is useful to you, or if you have any suggestions, good, bad, or ugly. I will not take it personal. Feel free to let me know. Yeah, Melanie's mentioning it's easier to head than heading to a physical location with a board so large. It's true, especially with so many of us living in other places and commuting. It definitely is a good alternative for that. Preeti's asking if we could do a similar webinar for Google Chromebooks down the road. That's a great idea. I'll look into that for you. So just keep an eye on my learning plan. Definitely, I've enjoyed the webinar so far, so I may put some other ones out later in the year. Yeah, Nancy, you're right. Having that recording to refer back to is so awesome because I go to a lot of training sessions and I'm so pumped and I'm like, this is wonderful. And then the very next week, I'm like, what was that thing again? So at least with this, you can come back and watch again. That's a good point. Melissa, Classroom does require iOS 11 or later. If it's saying your iPad is up to date, it may be that your iPad is too old to be updated to the latest iOS. Without seeing your iPad, I'm not sure if that's the case. But if it's saying it's on something like iOS 9 or iOS 10 and it won't update any further, it may be that that particular iPad is just not capable of being updated anymore. And unfortunately, so many of our school iPads have been purchased, 4 or 5 years ago when iPads were first coming out, that may be the case with a lot of the older ones. Hi, Una, I miss you. The ATRT for Somerset is Deanne Prinz. And Lorraine will probably type that out for you so you can see the spelling. Countryside Village is Jay Barra. Melissa is asking if you can do guided access to multiple apps. Unfortunately, Melissa, you cannot. What you would have to do is use guided access on one app in particular, and then when you're ready to switch to the second app, you as the teacher would have to end guided access, open the second app, start guided access again, and then give the iPad back to the student. Trying to think of a way around that. If you were doing something in like center format and you happen to have 2 iPads available at that center, you could set one iPad to the one app, the second iPad to the other app. That might be a workaround maybe. But unfortunately, there's not a way to say, you know, I want to do guided access, give the student this app and this app and this app and this app. Unfortunately, it won't let you do that. In which case, you might be better off doing the Apple Classroom route. I know you said your iPads aren't new enough to update to that, so you kind of have to work around it. All right, folks, last call for any questions. And if you didn't get a chance to ask your question tonight, by all means, like I said, send me an email or reach out to your ATRT. We can always follow up with you after the fact as well. Preeti asks if it's possible to do a time limit on the entire iPad. Yes, you can. And that would be through the clock app, and then going to timer, and then setting your time right here for however long you wanted it to be. And then making sure your alarm sound, instead of being a noise, is set to that stop playing. And then once the time is up, it'll go back to the lock screen. And again, for that to work really effectively, it needs to be on an iPad where the child doesn't know the passcode to get back into the iPad again, or else they'll be like, time's up. Are you kidding me? Swipe. And then they're still going to go. Which is tricky on school shared iPads because you don't often want to be setting passcodes, because then when it goes to the next classroom, they'll be like, how do I get into this iPad? So if you do try that trick and you set a passcode on the iPad, make sure you remove the passcode before sending it back in your shared sets. But if you're in a classroom that has dedicated iPads, by all means, you could do that. Or with your own kids too. You're welcome. Awesome. Well, I didn't see any more questions coming in, so I'm going to say goodnight and goodbye. Thanks again to everyone for coming out. I really appreciate your participation. So awkward for me sitting here by myself talking on a screen. So I really appreciate those of you in the chat. Makes it extra fun. So good night, and keep an eye on my learning plan for future webinars.